Hello and welcome to the Talk Football Podcast. This is season 5, episode 8, and we have Paul Nelson back on the show. Good evening, Paul.
Good evening. Nice to see you again.
Yes, mate, it's been a little while, isn't it? So, we're going to have a little bit of a catch up with Paul, talk a little bit about sort of Spurs over the last month or so, and Paul's thoughts on that going forward. And then a little bit of a general football chit chat, maybe covering a little bit about my club as well. And because we have some upheavals at both of our clubs. So but we're going to kick off with Spurs. So mixed bunch of results over February. And obviously, I spoke to you on text not yesterday, was it yesterday? Can't remember. I actually thought you'd get something out of the City game, but close 1-0 defeat.
Yeah, I was never confident. We've got the 3 wins to get ourselves away from the relegation zone. So we're not going to go down, so that's something.
It's still mad to even contemplate, like United included, that the fact that you got clubs of that kind of size, that sort of size, even close to that area.
We looked a lot better in the second half against City, and he was clearly resting players and giving other players games just to get minutes in their legs, like Udogi, as an example, over Spence. Kulu being on the bench, Son being on the bench, playing Odebear, who's been out all season. So I think he's just using this time to try and get everybody fit and everybody up to speed and actually have a full, or as near as a full squad as we possibly can. Because at the moment, we're still playing without our 2 first-choice centre-halves and our first-choice striker and our backup striker. So we haven't got a striker at all.
It's been I've been really impressed actually with the turnaround in Jed Spence. It's a bit of a sort of like a phoenix from the flames story, because when he went out on loan and stuff like that, you probably would have thought that was him done for Tottenham, but he's had quite a resurgence.
It's been a weird one because he came off the bench against Coventry in the very early round of the League Cup, saved the game, scored a goal, was like the best player. So the assumption after that was that he would just, he'd start to play, particularly as the injuries kicked in as well. And he didn't. And didn't have him in squad, so he had him on the bench. He didn't even have him in the Europa League squad for the group stage. And there was a press conference the other week before the City game, I think it was, and Andrew was trying to take credit for his resurgence in kind of saying that he'd kept him back, he'd purposely tested him, purposely made it difficult for him to get in the team. Really wanted to test his character and test to see how much he needed, how much he needed it and how much he wanted it. I'm not sure if I believe him. I think he didn't rate him, didn't want him anywhere in the squad. Injuries meant he had no choice, and now he's our best player, so he's got no choice but to play him. Basically, he has to start either at right back or left back. Personally, I think he's a better left back because you get so many inverted wingers these days, don't you? So they're coming in onto their kind of inside foot, whereas of course that's his right foot if he plays on the left. So like Salah as an example. In the first leg of the League Cup. He just, I would say, had him in his pocket, but he was able to control him because that's how he wanted to come inside.
Yeah,
and then also when Spurs attack, because Andrew wants the fullbacks to invert and go into midfield as opposed to go up the wing and kind of cross the ball, it naturally moves himself in. So personally, I'd play him at left back, but either fullback position, he just has to play.
Yeah. I'm quite pleased for the lad because but before he came to Spurs, he was rated as one of the best up and coming fullbacks around. So it's a good little story. I'm quite pleased with that. So I mean, the rest of your February was a bit of a mixed bag, like I said. Defeats at Villa probably not unexpected because Villa have been flying and going pretty well this season. The obvious game that you did win and score a few goals was the Ipswich one, and you'd expect that, but it was that and the Man United home game were probably the 2 real key fixtures that sort of like put a bit of distance, that sort of 10-point gap between you and that relegation area.
Yeah, it was nice to get them wins, but I think the disappointing games were the cup games. So Liverpool away, they were pretty shocking. It was a really difficult performance, I thought.
Yeah.
And of course, that rolled straight into the Villa in the FA Cup, and Villa scored after, was it in the first minute or 90 seconds or something
Yeah.
crazy? So they're so up and down, and then yes, they beat Ipswich, but equally Ipswich were amazing in the first 10 minutes of that game and could have been 3-up within the first 10 minutes.
Chances. Yeah.
Delap looks like one hell of a striker. I think there'll be a few teams after him.
I mean, my club included. I mean, it looks pretty, a strong possibility. I mean, obviously he's worked with Maresca before at Manchester City, so it's a player that the manager knows and would trust, and would provide good competition for Nicholas Jackson. Certainly a player I would like to see us sign. Good young English forward, and he's got a touch. I know it's been mentioned before by various pundits that he has got a touch of the Harry Kane's about him in terms of sort of style. Obviously he's younger, so he's got that pace as well, but the sort of style of play, the directness, and sort of shooting prowess that Kane has, not afraid to take that opportunity from wherever angle, and he's got a bit of that about him, I think, with Delap.
I'd compare him closer to Shearer, I think, in the sense he's a bit of a bully. Kane's not really, or never has been that kind of bully of a centre forward, but he kind of reminds me like Shearer, like a real physical presence.
Yeah, I can see that about him. I can see that about him, and yeah. But I mean, whoever gets the lad, or if he by some sort of miracle Ipswich can reel Wolves in, you'd want to see a player like that stay in the Premier League, that's for sure. And there are certainly, I mean, yourselves, my club, you would think possibly United, Arsenal, Newcastle, if they lose Isak, there'll be plenty of suitors for the player, that's for sure. Right, so coming up on Thursday, which you've got Europa League game against AZ Alkmaar, and in between that, a game against Bournemouth as well. I mean, this is like for Ange. Obviously, this is for his future. That's two real key fixtures, particularly those two cup games there, because I think I mean, he said it himself. He wins a trophy in his second season, so he kind of put the pressure on himself, I suppose.
Yeah, I think for his future, we have to go at least close, if not win it, and we need to demonstrate a real upturn in league form. Yeah. But ultimately, I don't think let's just win that competition.
I mean, he's starting to get a few players back now. We got Vicario back now from injury.
Yeah,
I think Van der Ven is pretty much there, isn't he? Or did he have a reoccurrence?
Yeah, it should be a week, him and Romero, apparently. So it just depends how much he wants to rest him, and if he. I mean,
obviously, from your sakes, is that hopefully they don't rush him back like they did, when they rushed him back into the game against Chelsea.
I think certainly for the first leg against Alkmaar, I'd like to think we can beat Alkmaar because we've already beaten them once. I'd like to think we could beat them without the two centre halves, and then you've got the two centre halves up and ready for the quarter final of the Europa League, hopefully. But we'll see.
And then following those two games, you got Fulham at the Cottage. So I mean their form's a little bit hit and miss, but at home at the Cottage, they're a different beast. That's going to be a tough fixture, and it's and you kind of stick with them going into April. You don't leave South West 6 because then you play us.
Is it Chelsea?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but
3rd of April.
If we've got players back, then there's no excuses in either of them games. It's been such a funny season.
We're so hit and miss that anything could happen in that game.
Well, I remember the game that just before I came on. I was thinking of the game that I completely blotted it from my memory, and then it was like we were 2-up against Chelsea, and then what was it, 4-2 in the end? Was it
4-2? Yeah.
Yeah. So and at that point, I was calling for his head because I was like, we can't be. I was proper emotional. We can't be too up against them and then losing.
Yeah,
So yeah, we need to give you guys a good game. Like we've got a good record against United. We've got a good record against City, although obviously not the last one. We need to start showing we can take points off the other big teams. And
yeah.
our record against Chelsea, our record against Arsenal, our record against Liverpool is pretty shocking, to be honest. So that needs to be improved. If he can give us some hope that next season will be different.
I mean, it's a tough month because I mean, Wolves have had a little bit of an upturn, so a trip to Molineux is not going to be a particularly easy game. You're home at Southampton before that, so you would expect the way Southampton ship goals that'll be somewhere you can get a bit of confidence and cash in and get a bit of a performance. But to close out April home to Forest obviously are flying third in the league, which is
Yeah.
still boggles my mind. And obviously an ex-Spurs manager in charge, which is boggles the mind. But and then you close out away at Anfield, so that's a tough month. And then on current form, it's not a great deal of. You wouldn't think that there's a potential for not a great deal of points there.
I don't know. I'm not, I mean, we'll see. We're so up and down. And as I say, if we got a full squad, so if we can get the two centre halves back and the two strikers, so Richie and Solanke,
I
think it'd be decent. We'd do all right.
I mean, if
but
you look
ultimately,
on paper as a back four, Spence, Romero, Van de Ven, and Udogi with Vicario in goal. Put and potentially maybe push Archie Gray back into midfield, give him a proper chance to play that sort of 6 role, and anchor in front of that. I mean that's a real solid base.
yeah, I mean, the injuries have all been in the back or up front. We haven't got a striker, we haven't got the centre halves. Yeah. That's been the issue, whereas we are overly stocked in midfield. However, we don't have a decent defensive midfielder. We don't have a good number 6. And so I think what most Spurs fans would want to see from now until the end of the season is give Archie Gray a few games in there. I think regardless, even if he plays well, we still need a backup number 6, or so we still need to go into the market in the summer and spend big money on a good number 6. So he's got some competition, and also you've seen with Gray this year, he's gone right back, he's gone centre half. I think he can also play as an 8 as well if needs be. So, but I'd like to see him given at least half a dozen games, 8 games between now and the end of the season.
I mean, he's a good player. He's very, very, very good on the ball, and he could, someone like that with that kind of ability in midfield on the ball, it just gives that platform, that link player, a bit like like the way Rodri does it with City, able to those transitions between midfield and the forward line, getting that connection. So I like the player, so I'd like to see him flourish there.
He looks like he can pass the ball both long and short. It looks like he's got good vision. But more than anything, we need somebody in midfield who's prepared to tackle.
Yes,
none of them tackle. You just walk past them. So so hopefully he gets a chance, and then it could completely change the balance of the team because we don't have a number 6. We are so vulnerable.
Yeah.
Particularly when you've then got them running at poor Archie Gray or Ben Davies as an example. Danso's come in and done well. He looks like he's a good.
Yeah, do you know what? I mean, a bit of an under the radar signing. There was a few clubs in for him, and he's been on in around the European scene. So for anyone that watches, European football and have kept abreast with European competitions, he is a name that would be relatively familiar with people. I think he was close before John knew. He was close on the move to, I think it was Southampton.
Or might have been Wolves. It was one of them.
One of the two.
Big physical lad. He likes to run forward. He's not scared to put his head in or any part of his body in, which again is something that we lack. We're all a bit too soft.
Yeah. And obviously with the injury record, the other two, that's it was just a signing that was needed. So nice of Mr. Levy to put his hand in his pocket, I suppose.
Yeah, right at the end of the window.
Right,
Yeah.
right at the end of the window. That's
Won't
fair.
get the guys in at the beginning of January where we can
No,
rack up the
we
points, be higher in the
but
league.
I suppose that's the thing. I mean, obviously, in terms of both of our clubs, there's been that turmoil running in the background. I mean, I know you mentioned it before we came on about the Chelsea protest. Um, I mean, I've not seen anything like in terms of that at Spurs, but I know that. But I mean, obviously, you could probably shed some light more on that. Has there been any kind of like organised protests outside the ground?
Yeah, no, there was a massive one, really successful before the last home game. So there was about a march of, they're guessing or estimating around 2,000 fans marched up the high road. It's next called Change for Tottenham. It's the first time that it seems to have really gathered momentum. And then the home game before that against United, there was a big banner which said something like 25 years, 16 managers, one trophy, time for change. And then at the end of the game, there was a sit-in. So not as many people sat in. So the idea was they were all to go in the south stand, but of course that south stand holds like 17,000 or something. So it looked relatively empty, but it was all being done while the Sky cameras were doing their talking, and you could kind of see it all in the background. So there was a lot of talk on the media for it. Yeah, and hopefully it remains because. Yeah, I think the banner says it all, doesn't it? 25 years, 16 managers, one trophy. I mean, it's not good enough.
It's not good enough.
The ground is nice, but the thing that everyone forgets about the ground, which always annoys me, is we're only meant to be at Wembley for a season. We were at Wembley for nearly 2 seasons. The ground was late, so for as good as the ground was, I use the phrase was because things move on. Like when Arsenal built their ground, everyone thought, this is a brilliant ground, this is great. And now that pales into insignificance compared to the Tottenham ground. And then in 10 years' time, there'll be another ground which makes Tottenham look old-fashioned and outdated. So,
albeit not as big as yours, but in terms of facilities, I mean, Bramley Moor Dock, Everton's new ground, they had their test event there last week, and that looks phenomenal. It really does.
So infrastructure is great, and of course you want to have good infrastructure. But the really annoying thing is that the club are tone deaf. So there was this massive protest, as I said. They were coming up the high road. Everyone's kicking off. Really big on social media. So they were big on trying to get all the international fans to be involved, and so loads of posts on social media, and then. What do you get on the morning of the game? Like 3 or 4 emails from all the different concerts that are taking place in the summer. There was a joke going around about during the transfer window that Spurs announced or signed more artists to play at the ground than what they did players. There was 2 or 3 different gigs, and then there was the Ben Eubank, all done during the transfer window. So they announced and signed all of them events up. They signed up more events than they did.
And all they brought in is Kevin Danzo.
Yeah, exactly. So he's tone deaf. You can't argue that he's done some good stuff, but it stretches back. So as great as the ground is, his original plan was for us to be where West Ham are now. There were protests about that, and then we had to, we had going back again. We had Martin Jol sacked at half time of a European game. So I remember being at the game, and then like the rumours going around, and all the fans knew that he was being sacked before he was sacked. Yeah, it was absolutely stupid. Then we had, Redknapp was in a champion going for the title, and we signed Sahar and Ryan Nelson. Now living in New Zealand, I should be nice to Ryan Nelson, but he wasn't the kind of the centre half we needed. Mourinho sacked 5 days before a cup final.
A cup final, yeah.
And the story there is apparently we had a league game 2 days after Mourinho was sacked. We had a league game, so the league game was like 3 days before the cup final. And of course, we had Bale, who couldn't play 2 games in a week. So Mourinho's position was, well, my focus is the cup final, and Bale's in the cup final. Levy wants to get into the Champions League. So as far as he's concerned, the focus is not the League Cup because that gets you 100k or whatever it is. The prize money is nothing. He wanted to be in the Champions League. So sacks him because, their strategies aren't aligned. And that was also
goes out the window.
And that was the same day as the announcement for the Super League. So it was also seen.
Yeah, of course it was. Yes. God, what a news day that was then.
So there's,
at least your protest was a bit more organised than ours.
What happened to Chelsea?
I was supposed to go down. So my initial plan was I was going to go down to Chelsea and film and interview fans. And I'm actually quite glad that I didn't go. So we had the builders in at the missus' place that day. So I was stuck there. So at the time they'd gone, I had no chance of being able to get down there to make it for the start of the protest at 6:00. And then I was watching it on like the social platforms that I follow with the Chelsea, and it was embarrassing to say the least.
But I
agree with some of the sentiments. Yeah. So
I haven't seen any
the
of
whole
it,
thing.
But I would see it as a start. So you have to remember, so the 25 years that I'm talking about, 16 managers, one trophy, time for change and all that sort of stuff. How many Champions Leagues have you won during that time? How many titles have you won? So you guys haven't got, But I remember the Chelsea. I remember, being our age, is a Chelsea that got 40,000 fans for a game in the early 90s against Man United, and only got 9,000 for a game against Man City. That's my Chelsea. That's the Chelsea that I grew up in. Grew up in South London supporting Spurs, with a team with a fickle fan base and wasn't very good, but beat Spurs every year. But most of your fans are on this 25 year period of winning. So you've had a couple of years of not winning anything. It's actually not really that big a deal.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, I think the biggest aspect is not necessarily. Yeah, yes, we, a lot less from the actual fans that have got a problem with Blueco. It's not so much on the fact that we're not necessarily worried about that we ain't going to not win, because I think if you're pumping money into the playing squad as consistently as these lot are going to be, eventually you're going to get it right. So, but it's the whole infrastructure of how they're actually running the club now. The disengagement from the fans in terms of that's where my problem lies with them. And if Chelsea fans are honest and real, because this is where it gets a bit embarrassing, because outside the Bovril gate, which is where it all took place, and that you had the banners. Most of them were just handwritten pieces of paper, and it was a bit embarrassing. But they're chanting like Jose Mourinho, chanting Roman Abramovich. Well, Roman Abramovich isn't coming back. That's not happening. He ain't coming back. Blueco are going nowhere. So we need to be able to work with the club as a supporter base to get across what we want from them. What we want from them, we don't want. And when you've got these sporting directors in charge, and they're kind of just like, it's like directionless signings. So, January we let 5 players or whatever it was leave when we've got our only 2 strikers injured. So you've got Jackson and the young lad Gui injured, and we don't sign a forward. We've got issues at the back with a few injuries with Fofana. Reece James still on his way back. Badiashile out injured, etc. We let Disasi go. All right, I know we call him disaster, but you don't replace that with anyone, and that's this directionless thing with that's happened with Blueco.
What you just said that was interesting to me was that at Spurs we had lots of Levy out, Enoch out on social, and there'd be tiny protests outside the ground where only 100 or so people would go. And I think in part, both for Spurs and Chelsea, I've said to you before, London doesn't really have a history of protesting, does it? It's not Liverpool, it's not Manchester. And exactly what you just said about how your owners aren't going anywhere. So the majority of the Spurs fans knew that we can shout levy out and ENIC out, but they're not going anywhere until they get the money that they want for the club. And that's where this new change for Tottenham has found its success, because the success is in the word change. It's whatever change that you want. So there are people within the movement that want levy out and want ENIC out. There are others that just want them to step away a little bit further. There are others that just want the purse strings loosened a bit. You know, we were told the stadium would be a game changer. So there are those that just want some money spent on the club. There are others that just want the club to not be tone deaf anymore. So during a transfer window, don't announce half a dozen concerts in the summer. Focus on the, focus on the players
on the playing squad.
You can do
a bit of.
We
just want to be competitive. You know, you just want to see that. I think, and this goes for both of us, really, is that you just want to see that the club is prepared to back. You know, if you're going to back the manager, back him, give him the tools that he needs. You know, clearly both our managers probably play a similar kind of style of football as well. So they all want to play these inverted fullbacks. They all want to play a progressive possession-based football. Yeah. You know, they're not going to be able to deliver that. It's pointless hiring these managers, because when a manager comes in, you know what you're getting. Like they have their portfolio. They'll come in, they'll sit in front of you, they'll say, "This is how I want to play. This is what I'm going to need to do that." So if you're happy with that and you want to hire me, this is what I need. Clearly, those conversations would have took place between, Levy and Bluco, Maresca, and that's the whole point that you're going. But then if you're not, it's almost pointless. Then becomes pointless if you're going to then turn around 6 months, a year later, and then sack them, because what are you doing? Why are you hiring them? You know what you're getting. You know what you need to give them.
And I think that's the only thing that's kept Ange in the job, and will keep him in the job until the end of the season. Again, the 16 managers in 25 years, it might actually be more, but it's that concept of, well, if you don't get it right this time, what does that say about you? So in previous times when there's been heat on the chairman and on ENIC, it's sack the manager, get a new manager and start a new project. Whereas now it's like, no, if you sack the manager, and that's actually a sign that, again, you failed, and the problem
you failed. This is not Ange failing. This is you failing, because you failed to give the manager, who's got a clear vision of how he wants to play, you have not given him the tools to do it.
And he hasn't been given the tools. But my issue with him and as an individual, or with his management style, is I think he needs the best players in the league to be successful. And Spurs are never going to have the best players. And that's difficult.
In the league. Yeah.
So,
and this would have been the year with City in this transition phase. This was the year where a club could step up to the plate and maybe pinch a Premier League and pinch an FA Cup, or Liverpool obviously have proved to be that club this year.
If I go back to what I was thinking at the beginning of the season, like Liverpool got a new manager in, so that should be transition. You guys, I thought, well, you've got a championship manager, so you're in transition. Our managers had 12 months. I thought we'd finish third this year.
Yeah,
we've lost 14 league games, I think it is.
I mean, that's insane. It's insane. So, and I know you can look at United and being in a similar position, changing a manager, and all that as well. But I mean, that club's a mess off the pitch and on the pitch in terms of financials and everything that's happening in the club. And we're not at that stage. Both of our clubs are not at that kind of stage with it. So there's no real excuses for the boards of both clubs that we shouldn't be. I mean, I know we're still in the top four, but so there is a bit of perspective that I think particularly with Chelsea fans, that we are still in the top four. We do have a young team and we are progressing forward. So maybe Bluco ain't getting it as wrong as we thought. But yeah, in terms of Spurs, so I suppose if we look at the final thoughts in terms of what that looks like towards the end of the season, does he need to deliver, that Europa League to survive and stay in the job? Do you have a feeling that will be the case?
I think if he wins it, that definitely saves his job, because he'd be the most successful manager at the club since 1984.
Yeah.
So, but other than that, we need to go close.
Gut feeling, do you feel that he may well pull the trigger on him if there's no? I mean, obviously, European qualification, if it's not through that competition, seems unlikely. However, if you did win it, it delivers Champions League football.
Champions League, yeah. I don't think he will, mainly because if he does, then it puts the heat back on him.
Yeah.
And as I said, I go up and down depending on the result. So after the Chelsea game, I was furious and I wanted him sacked. And then, I wanted him sacked after the Liverpool second leg semi-final defeat because I just thought that was a shockingly weak performance in what was such an important game. But if I step back a bit, I think I'd like him to be given, regardless of what happens in Europa League, as long as we don't embarrassingly crash out of it.
Yeah.
I think I'd like him to start the third season and actually give
him another window, try and get some players in.
Yeah.
Maybe then look at that first month of the season and see if there's any kind of significant steps forward.
Tend to take it to the most clubs tend to take it to the November international break, don't they? So I'd certainly like to see how we start the season next year, having spent a few quid and properly back him. I think. But then
give him a full deck to shuffle, and with a few little aces up his sleeve and see where he is.
If you invite me on after the Fulham game and we've lost 3-0 to Fulham away,
you may well be raging. Brilliant. Right. Well, there we go. So we've had a bit of a Spurs catch up. We've done a little bit of nonsense on my club, and so we'll get you back on, mate. Towards the end of March, after this run of cup fixtures and those league games, and we'll see where you are. We'll see where we are. And we'll see how angry you are, how angry I am, and it would be interesting to see if there's any more protests that pop up in the meantime. And yet again, I suppose, you say that a lot of that will be driven by results. Yeah. So there we go. So that's episode 8, mate. That's a catch up with you. Thanks for coming on, and
nice. Thanks for having me.
Using up your time in your Sunday evening. So I suppose back to work tomorrow for you.
Back to work tomorrow, yeah.
Back to work tomorrow, yeah. Thankfully, I don't go. I'm not back to work. I've still got one more day off tomorrow. I've had a nice time off. It's been nice. I've been able to get to a lot of games. So I've covered up, obviously, on the matchday vlog section of the channel. We've been covering a lot of non-league football. So please, if you watch this, anyway, go and check out the non-league vlogs that we've been doing, and there's a couple of other random games in there as well. So Adam visited the Derby ladies team, and I went to watch the Chelsea Arsenal women's game at Stamford Bridge. 34,000 crowd, phenomenal atmosphere, great game. Terrible weather, but so please check out those vlogs, and if you're new here, please drop a like on this episode and video, and hit the subscribe button. So we're over 100 subscribers now. We've picked up another one this morning, so I'm well chuffed. Thank you to everyone that's done that and subscribed, and onwards and upwards. We're on our way. We're growing, and like I say, we'll have more catch ups with Paul. Not just talking about Spurs, we'll talk about other football stuff with him as well. But yeah, we'll catch up with everyone again in about 4 or 5 weeks' time. Job done. Right, so that's goodbye from me. Oh, also, don't forget, join the socials. So yes, that's goodbye from me and goodbye from Paul.
Catch you all later.